My job is to get us to lunch, I guess. We have an hour and a half for lunch, so there's no need to start panicking yet. What I want to do is finish off with the outreach portion of what the Food Biotech Committee has been doing. Just quickly, I'm going to go through, I've got some slides for 2013. I've got some for 2012. I may skip most of those, depending on how many stomachs are gurgling out there. And I want to start off, though, with a little bit of talking about where we're going rather than just describing the workshop. If we look at outreach, outreach consists of a bunch of different things. It's not only workshops, but it's also our publications. So this is actually a publication on breeding stacks, on the stacks task force that just finished up and published their work. It was an editor's choice. In fact, both of their papers were editor's choice in the journal. We also have, say, workshops that we do. These are some detection workshops. These are workshops where we've got a more like this kind of workshop. And then we have our one-pagers, and if anybody wants a copy of all the one-pagers, I believe they're on the memory stick that's outside. The other thing we try and do is every one of our publications now is free access. So we make sure we have that free access so that people can download them and read them, print them, or do whatever they want to do with them. I put this up here because the mission of IFBiC is to provide reliable, accessible scientific information to the broadest range of stakeholders. And we have to make it accessible, and we have to try and get a broad range. And we've been struggling with this for a while, because how do we get to the maximum number of people in the most effective ways? And we have peer-reviewed publications. We have some white papers, we will have some white papers maybe, which are all of these publications are free access. The main committee, we have a bunch of task forces and working groups. The main committee's trying to encourage outreach by the task forces as they complete their work, but we don't keep the task forces around for a long time, so then that responsibility then devolves to the main committee. And we're not getting as much outreach as we'd like. As you can see, we've had the comment, we're not getting out there enough. So we don't feel that we're really being effective in our outreach, and we need to find ways to improve that. Obviously, if we have a plan or a strategy, we've been working on that for the last few years. I'll show you, there is a document actually. We need contacts and input. The more people we can contact and have contact with that can suggest places we can be effective, where these materials can be taken, that people would be interested in them, the better. And we're hoping with our expanded steering group that we will get some help from that. We do get a lot of outreach requests from governments and branches, and you'll see we've been quite active. However, we don't feel we're getting as much bang for the buck as we could with our materials. We have been more reactive than proactive. And I think that's something we've been sort of struggling with. How do we be proactive, but then get that balance of meeting people's needs? And I think it comes down to try and get it so people know about our materials, and then they can ask about it. In addition to workshops, what's our strategy in terms of publication derivatives? So, can we do trifolds that we can leave behind? Can we do nice little brochures that are good for giving to regulators or government people, or, we always say if you're going to give something to a senator, it's got to be at a certain reading level. And I'm not going to say what that is, but it's pretty low. Web pages, our web pages are basically not visited very much, so they're not being very effective. Should we be tweeting our stuff, We do have, or we have had some effect to the communication, attempt at a communications plan. I'm not sure it's sort of getting there, but again, it requires a lot of resource and a lot of time. And so that's the balance between what we're doing on the task forces, what we're doing on this, and getting stuff out. Publications have been the publications from the task forces 9 and 10 that Kevin talked about have been a challenge. They've been very complex problems, and a lot of differing opinions have been brought together. And we do have these two now from the STACS task force. They are finished. Again, they're in plant physiology. These are on the memory stick, and also you can download them from the journal page. This is just an example of one of the figures that's in there. You can see there's quite a lot of information. Trying to break this stuff down so it's easy to understand and use some very simple sort of visions of what it is to try and get a good communication of it. And actually, you can download this slide from the journal too. Publications in preparation, we have Task Force 10, which is the mammalian studies task force, I like to call it, whole foods and also proteins. You see there are 2 papers which are getting close to finished. Again, there's been a lot of discussion on these. We have some lead authors here who are really bringing these to fruition. And then we also, within the sampling and detection working group, we're working on a couple of papers on areas that we see there's a gap. One is understanding sampling, which is a major issue for a lot of people to understand sampling and how it works, because they always talk to statisticians, and statisticians are not very comprehensible to the normal person. So we're trying to act as that bridge between the two. And I think sounds like a few of you have had that experience with statisticians. Contamination control, the other things we've learned from our workshops is that contamination control in the lab and in the field and when you're taking samples is a really key issue in this whole area. And so we're writing a paper on that as well. We won't call it contamination control, we'll call it something else, but that's basically what it is. I want to quickly go through our workshops of 2013 just to let you know what we've been doing or are going to do. So far, these are focus areas of workshops that we have on the books or have already done. 2 on food improvement, 6 on general safety assessment. These are workshops and contain a lot of different aspects, and therefore I call them general. 2 on stacked events, 1 on whole food testing, and 1 on sampling and detection. Again, just as was mentioned earlier for HESI, we have a lot of work. We work with HESI and with other organizations, with the branches, with governments, to bring these workshops forward. So you'll see some of the workshops are the same ones that were shown earlier. The first workshop of the year was when, in the annual meeting, we've really been looking at this whole issue of working with the food companies, because if you look at ILSI, there's a lot of food companies in ILSI, and there's not a lot of food companies within the Food Biotechnology Committee. And so how can we reach out to those food companies in a way that's meaningful for them? So if you look at this old graph, and it is a rather old graph, you remember we thought we'd have agronomic traits, then we'd have quality traits, and then we'd have plants and factories and new renewable resources. This is an old slide. We don't seem to have got much further than here. A little bit of this, but not much. And I think there's a whole gap here in terms of using biotechnology to improve the food supply that we haven't really got to. And so we wanted to talk about that this year. And in Miami, we talked about, in the annual meeting, we talked about just to try and figure out what might be, so give some history and background. So this whole issue that Wayne was talking about, that, you know, there's a lot of diversity out there, there's a lot of stuff that's been done. RNAi is part of the normal breeding process. So we had to explain that a little bit and then move on to saying what we can do and some lessons learned about food safety assessment. And then there was an interesting talk on reducing acrylamide in potato chips by fiddling with the metabolism with the plant. And that was quite interesting, but it was applied in an area which wasn't really a safety. Is acrylamide a safety issue or not? That's a question. That's another question. But it's definitely an issue for the potato industry, I can tell you. And then we've actually been invited by the American, well, it's the ACCI, it's the cereal chemists, to go and give a similar type of talk at their convention later this year. We were at the OECD meeting again, the Task Force on Safety of Novel Foods and Feeds. Both HESI and IFBiC are invited on a regular basis to give workshops in the spring meeting of those working groups of OECD. And that's usually a very good interaction. From what I hear, it was a very good meeting again this year. We were involved in this workshop in China just recently, and then also I think Wayne was in Paraguay. Huh? Where is he? Oh, there he is, yes. I assume that went well. Yes, okay. Then, so those are ones that's happened already. We are planning quite a big workshop at the request of the SENESA, which is the Argentinian Food Safety Authority, what are they doing is they're working with various countries that are importers and exporters, and they wanted they're doing a 3-day workshop, which is really initiated from them, and it's still being discussed exactly what will be in that, but it's a whole range of food safety assessment and issues like that. So there's other countries like China that we've invited people from Europe. I don't know if they'll come. There's a bunch of other countries that's been invited. So this is part of a big workshop series. And I think, well, we're thinking about whether we can continue this with a workshop in North America sometime in the future as well. That would be nice to make it a series rather than just a one-off. Obviously this workshop or meeting. And then we are still planning for India sometime in September. This is proving to be difficult to figure out exactly what the right mix of talks, etc., is for that. And again, as was said earlier, it's nice to have more advance warning of a workshop than less advance warning. We tend to get a lot of requests come in during the annual meeting in January and expected to do workshops in June, and that can be really tough. It depends on the kind of workshop. If it's just talks, it's not as bad. If we have a lab session and that, which we have as sampling and detection workshops, that can be very difficult to set up in less than 9 months. We've had workshops through the stack, or we're going to have workshops with the stack focus. This is the one that was in June. We're talking about something with LC Southeast Asia late on in the year. And then there was also one on a poster, which is going to be at the International Congress of Toxicology later in the year. That's just a poster. The other thing we've done is and I was just told today, this is actually going to happen. I've been chasing this for a couple of years, actually. We had a workshop back in 2011 for the Ministry of Agriculture in Brazil, and they wanted to talk about sampling in the field and detection methods for plants as well as for grain, etc. And it was a closed workshop just for the Ministry of Agriculture people. And so it was a very good dialogue and some good discussions there. And they wanted us to come back because we got into the issue of sampling a little bit as part of our one of the demonstrations. And they said, can you come back and do this? But it's been difficult to set up. But thank you, we just set it up. We have now a request to do that. We've also been chasing down the Mexican government. We went there, 2 of us went there last year to give a workshop on, to help give a workshop on sampling detection. We gave 4 talks between the 2 of us. That was about more than half of the workshop that day. And they said, we'd love you to come back. We haven't got that together yet. In 2012, we had a bunch of stuff we did. We did 4 on general safety and risk assessment, 2 on crop composition, whole food testing, sampling and detection. And I think the most notable one was this one in Dulles in Washington last year. This was a major change for us, I think, because what we did there, in many cases when we've done outreach, what we've done is talked about the task force products and things we've done. This was a change where we said, okay, what we'll do is we'll bring everybody in and just do a workshop. And I think we borrowed this a little bit from what HESI does, and we found it a very good model to do for this particular topic, which is composition was a very difficult thing to deal with. So what we did was brought people in, we had talks, we had 4 breakouts, and the other thing we did on this, it's the first time we've really televised our workshop. You could actually watch it in real time online, and we had some registrants for that, and then the videos are on the internet, and you can watch the videos still. So we've got about 150, I think, visits to those as well. So this is increasing our outreach using some of the tools that we can, and in fact, that was done internally by ILSI and did a great job on that. It turned out not to be too expensive. We did a bunch of other works. You can see Uruguay, Chile. This was 2 workshops back to back where because we had people in South America, we could do 2 workshops rather than do 1. And then Brasilia, we were invited by the regulatory authority in Brazil, and this has happened on a regular basis, to go and talk with them and update them on safety assessment. Because what happens, one of the things we see is we see regulators come in and turn over. So what happens is you go and you give a workshops in some place, and you've got all this stuff in front of people, and 3 years later, half of them are not there, they're doing something else, and the new people come in. So then you have to keep going back. So you never finish with this program. And that's something we have to bear in mind. I would say you'll notice here that quite a few in South America. South America has been very receptive, in fact, very active in asking us to go and do workshops in South America. We have done workshops, obviously, in China, Southeast Asia, and other places over the years. We'd love to do a workshop in Europe, other than the OECD ones. It hasn't come off yet. But the CEO of Bayer asked me why we hadn't done it, actually. I said, well, it's sort of difficult. But he was asking me why we did them in China and not in Europe. I think he was sort of joking. This is the one in Mexico we did on sampling detection. We had a poster at the ISB GMO. So if you look back, and I sort of give you a quick taste of what we've done, and there's a lot of information. Some of it's on the website. We hope to get more improved website. We've been working on certain portions of it quite actively. Our outreach really is, we've done peer-reviewed publications, we've done workshops. We need to really strategize about our outreach, how we can be more effective with less resources. Workshops take a lot of work. Producing the task force products take a lot of work. We have a huge amount of material that we've accomplished over the last, 5, 10 years that we need to get out there that's still relevant. And if you look back, actually, it's very interesting when you look back at citations and see some of these papers from 8, 9 years ago are still being cited, so they're obviously relevant. So we need to get out there, we need contact and input, we need requests for outreach, we need to be proactive if we can, and we need to look at other derivatives. I think we just publish the paper and we don't really go the next step and bring it to a level that can be easily understood in a one-page description or something. We have sort of experimented with that with the RNAi stuff. We had a draft. We've got to get back to that and follow that up. But we need to. So we need to sort of be more active, I think, in our outreach and more intelligent. That's it. Thank you.